Hot Take Express.
This is Hot Take Express with Kent Chamberlain, and I'm your host, Kent Chamberlain. This is episode number 22, another Vanguard party. All right, so let's talk about the thing that just happened in communist right spaces. Haz al-Din, Jackson Hinkle, a couple other people have gotten together and they've created the American Communist Party. The the CPUSA 2036 meme or whatever that was, they've given up on that. They've given up on taking over the CPUSA. It's firmly entrenched in liberal FBI hands, so they've given up on that. But they haven't given up on the thought that the CPUSA was the Vanguard Party. They just have decided that they have to create their own. So, just like the PCUSA did, just like a bunch of offshoots did, dozens of years ago, they're going to create another Vanguard Party, the American Communist Party. Now, is this a good idea? Yes and no. It's not an idea that I'm going to endorse with my own actions. I'm not going to follow this praxis, but these people are doing good things and are being useful more generally, and let me talk about why. So they are not they haven't made the mistakes that the CPI have in just completely elevating and centering this whole land back thing. They haven't gone out of their way to repel normal American workers by making that the front and center of their activities. There are people among them that are sympathetic to it, but those people seem to understand that it is worker be gone, and they've adjusted their praxis accordingly, which is all I really ever wanted from people with these land back notions in the communist right. So, and most of them do not feel that way. It should be added, just most of. It was Haz al-Din that just roasted the heck out of Rainer Shea so hard that he had to go over to Caleb, and denounce a little bit of the land back stuff, but because Haz had just pantsed him so hard in public. So these guys are doing good work. I have ideological differences with them, and I guess let me list them real quickly. I think I've done it in a previous episode, but just real quick. Pol Pot wasn't cool. He killed 3 million. The regime he led killed 3 million people. He was basically functionally a fascist in red clothing. He even said Indonesia needs 6 or 7 Hitlers, and he ended up being half of one, because the killing fields killed half as many people as the Holocaust. So Pol Pot memes don't make you cool. They just make normal people kind of shy away from you. So, but I haven't seen Pol Pot memes, and to be fair, that was just amongst the infrared group demographic. I didn't see them really anywhere else. And there's no indication that the American Communist Party has or advocates for these things. It does look like Haz is their main theorist, and he's a good theorist. I don't agree with his takes all the time, but I agree with him most of the time, and there are a lot of times when he is the only other person besides myself who has cottoned on to something. something real, something that's there. Like, it was just pure luck that led me to like study the Mongols in college, right? But then like found like, yeah, he and I made like very similar discoveries about them and how they relate to Marxism, Leninism. Um, and no one else was even thinking about that. So like, Haas is a great mind. Um, and no great mind is going to always agree with any other. So, that's fine. But like, it does, it's a theoretical difference that I feel the need to discuss, but it's like, it seems like he understands how that stuff works, and that it, so there's no need really for criticism. There's plenty of, space for diversity of thought. The coalition, the MAGA coalition, let's just phrase it like that. The MAGA coalition is a very big tent. So, him and, like the American Communist Party is welcome. And like, at least as far as I'm concerned, there are some things I find troubling. Like, they did make an effort to distance themselves from Trump. This feels like, okay, so China prefers the Democrats. Uh, Russia and the DPRK prefer Trump, but China prefers the Democrats. And because of these Pol Pot lines, Haas and his silverbacks have been pretty close to China, because China helped both American imperialism and Pol Pot by like acting as an intermediary between the two. And so they're likelier to just think something simply because China thinks it, and that doesn't really necessarily apply to our material conditions here. Insofar as they have released, Haas has released statements against Trump, this would seem to be in step with that. It's now, I do see them as part of the MAGA coalition, even though they've made these statements and they have these allegiances that are radically different from the rest of the MAGA movement. Why I say they're going to be a part of it is just they're fated to be a part of it. Like, the historical forces are going to, because they are also on the communist right. I mean, like, the historical forces are compelling even Caleb Maupin and the Uhurus to get with the program and like act in pro MAGA ways. They're going to do the same for so they're going to do the same for the American Communist Party. They're not going to join the Republican Party, none of them. Of that I'm certain. Their own literature has made that pretty clear. But they, their literature, or at least the literature of Haas, has also made clear that they see the Trump movement, MAGA, as like the beginning of a mass proletarian movement, which is correct. I agree with them on that point. So they're not, although they have reservations about Trump, and on a personal level, I get it, but what they don't understand is that, well, here, like, Trump, the man, has a relationship with MAGA that is described in Juche, I don't know. Basically, yeah, the principles of Juche explain that the proletariat express their will through a single individual, and that this is often manifested by a cult of personality. The Stalinist cult of personality would be the original example, but the cult of personality of the Kims, which survives in a DPRK that survived the end of the Cold War, unlike most of the communist states, including the Soviet Union itself. Suggests that there is some validity to this principle. And the Kims have never, like, each generation of the Kims occupies a lesser and lesser position in the hierarchical chain of like the DPRK government. But as a figurehead of this cult of personality that has existed around their family since Kim Il Sung, they wield immense power, and they can push aside bureaucracy that would otherwise crop up and be stifling. Bureaucracy for its own sake. Bureaucracy because a pencil pusher wants to feel important. Bureaucracy which is the enemy of living socialism everywhere. The cult of personality is actually an instrument of democracy in the sense, because the figure of the cult of personality is the focus of it. He or she is doing things that are wildly popular, but just are not getting done because some bureaucracy or some power in society somewhere is in the way. And so the cult of personality imbues that individual with the power to act on behalf of the whole people and sweep away the opposition. And this is one of Haas's observations that I also concur with and independently noticed, was that monarchies worked in similar ways, right? Instead of a party bureaucracy, you had the nobility, which is often very powerful and could it had the most direct incentive to choke the peasants and wring them for all they were worth. And a lot of times the peasants and the king would make an alliance against the nobles, and the best kings were generally the ones that were remembered most fondly by history, by the common people, were those that did this. Gustavus Adolphus II of Sweden, even though he spent a lot of money on foreign wars, he was remembered fondly because he entered into such an alliance against the nobles of Sweden, and that's part of why Sweden has one very egalitarian democratic socialist model today. It's one of the nicest places where capitalism rules, and that's because of a cult of a proto-Stalinist cult of personality, proto-Juche cult of personality, in the person of Gustav Adolf II. Anyway, so why I go on this tangent is that what they don't understand about MAGA is that Trump is that focus for MAGA. Trump is the instrument by which MAGA exercises power. And it's not like Trump is a great dude on a personal level, but like, they, of all people, should know, look beyond that. Okay, so like, the only possible person who can take power in these material conditions is someone who has enough of a media presence that they can counter the liberal media to some degree. And I don't like reality television. I never really watched it, but the workers did, and Trump was like a natural showman. And you know what? Actually, in a sense, I did watch reality television. I was a fan of professional wrestling as a kid, and Trump did some professional wrestling, and that was cool. You know, he has a way to interact with a vast number of people, like, that predates his political career, and he has a megaphone that most politicians do not, right? So that is part of why it had to be Trump, and it had to be like someone who is willing to play hardball. And yeah, Trump is kind of like in many ways, a petty criminal. like just the way he's run his business empire over the years. Most of the bourgeoisie are like this, right? And yeah, he's bourgeois, but he's like the bourgeois that all the other bourgeoisie hate. So he has the resources of the bourgeoisie and also an inbuilt reason to hate them. Even if it's not our reason, it doesn't matter. Like, he is the person that is capable of seeing our project into fruition. He is not necessarily inclined to do so, but neither was Abraham Lincoln. Yet, events, historical forces compelled Lincoln to do the right thing anyway, and they will compel Trump and the MAGA movement to do the right thing as well. And the J.D. Vance pick was a sign of that. But anyway, so like, I am explaining this not to dunk on the ACP, but simply to explain, like, okay, these are the differences between our lines, and this is why I'm sticking with the radical Republicans. Not that you people can't be members of both. Like, there's no reason that like cross membership is would be forbidden. Anyway, yeah, so it's just an explanation of the theoretical differences, because there's others. Yeah, we maintain our independence. Yeah, we radical Republicans, yeah, maintain our independence from all other parties, all other parties abroad. We're part of the U.S. Republican Party, and we are a faction within it, organizing for influence. We aren't inherently hostile to foreign communist parties, but we are going to take our own lines and for our own reasons, and it's going to be because it makes sense to us and not because someone in some foreign capital laid down the line and told us what to think. We don't let the American deep state tell us what to think. We're not going to let someone else's. I don't think the ACP necessarily would do that, but I think there is a tendency amongst some that it could lead to that if it weren't checked. But everything looks pretty cool over there, honestly. So, like, I'm not too worried about it. Oh, what else? What else is there to really say about? Okay, yeah, and like part of it is like Marxism-Leninism was built for the material conditions of the Soviet Union, and it could be applied more or less intact throughout the rest of the Eurasian space, but it doesn't apply directly to places outside of Eurasia well. It needs, in the material conditions of bourgeois democracy, it doesn't work because bourgeois democracies cannot be overthrown by violence, by revolutionary violence. Bourgeois democracies have to become possessed by revolutionary violence. They are the instruments of that revolutionary violence ultimately, and that means you have to win an election, and that prompts a so-called slaveholders revolt, and that's the force you ultimately need to beat is the class that runs the United States of America, not the United States of America. The United States of America will be your instrument with which to beat them. And that understand, and also there are some of my discussions with people in this area, this space, reveal that like there is an idea that there has to be like an orthodox Marxist-Leninist system of government in America, that we're going to like abolish Congress and like appoint these people's councils or something. And no, that's not going to work here. That will never work here. Um, now, yeah, like that's not to say that like revolution isn't going to happen. It's just going to take certain forms that Marxist Leninists are not used uh, uh, to it taking. It's going to take forms that accord with our material conditions here. Material conditions Lenin did not really write about. Stalin did not really consider. Um, and the only one that did was the annoying little twit named Kotsky. But sometimes that's just how, like the dialectic makes fools of us all, right? The guy that was full of dumb ideas ended up having one really solid insight that got proven true at after the end of the Cold War. Like with all these, like Venezuela and Nicaragua are cases in point that like they had to they had bourgeois democracies that could not be defeated ultimately by coups, but by elections. And so that's a difference between us, is that like I'm not trying to, well, and Marxist Leninists more broadly are not trying to abolish uh, bourgeois democracy. We're just going to like keep the democracy, the democratic forms of government intact as we transition the class in charge from the bourgeoisie to the proletariat. So it's um, the United States will be a proletarian democracy one day, just as Venezuela and Nicaragua currently are. Uh, and we're not going to have systems that looked like the USSR. Uh, and the mechanical attempt of reproducing the experience of the USSR here is actually condemned in Juche in the writings of of the Kims, because like they recognize that this mechanical reproduction of the Soviet experience is what doomed the so-called satellite states in Eastern Europe, the places that the Red Army liberated between Soviet borders and the Allied front. Um, they didn't tap into the Romanian or the Hungarian or the Polish or whatever experience. They tapped into the Soviet experience and then just mechanically applied them to these countries, and that didn't always work. And doing it to the neighbors of Russia was like bad enough, doomed to failure enough. Doing it to um, a country on the other side of the planet with a completely different political institutional system that was never ruled by Genghis Khan, that's just not going to work. So that's why we insist on the American version of communism and not Eurasian communism. We have no issue with Eurasian communists. Like, Eurasian communism in Eurasia is great. Yeah, Marxism, Leninism in Russia is awesome and what they should try doing. And they'll find that it should probably work pretty well for them. But that's not my country. That's their country. Like, we gotta do what's good for our country. And what our country looks like, what our Vanguard looks like, is the GOP. I mean, look at this convention, right? Okay, so like, look, they picked JD Vance. They picked JD Vance. Okay, and dude's not perfect, but like he is about, of like all the people that were seriously being talked about as potential vice president. All the people that he was talking about as a potential vice president, JD Vance was far and away the best. He was with the unions on the rail strike. And he's been like one of the biggest voices inside the new right, trying to get labor inside the tent, trying to get the Republicans to become a party of the working class again. And so, yeah, I'm like actually thrilled to bits about JD Vance being the dude. And you know, like the couch jokes are whatever. Like the internet is predictably stale sometimes. Memes just stop being funny to me once well, at least some memes stopped being funny to me once I realized how much the deep state uses them, and other deep states as well, for like their own purposes, and you know, corporations, and yeah, all these sinister powerful forces. So like you know, like you gonna make some couch memes, that's great, man. But like, what's it gonna come down to? Who does the American people think is going to be better for them and their family's economy? And I bet you it's gonna be the party of Trump and JD Vance. All right, because like, and also say that like, even if the GOP loses, this is like this is the direction of travel. We're only getting more red from here. We're only getting more socialist from here. All right, like we're already talking. Like this is a party that invited the Teamsters union leader to come talk. All right, the Teamsters didn't provide an endorsement yet, but the like just to show up and talk is like, and it was this close to an endorsement. I'll tell you what, like earlier, about a year ago, when we were first doing our outreach to the Teamsters, we radical Republicans, it was like 50-50, and you know, between the Republicans and Democrats within the union. Now it's more like 70-30. We can't take credit for all or even most of that, of course, but like minds are being changed. We are because we are in the room making the serious argument for it. You know, cause it just like, because there's always like a bunch of old guys that are like, oh, we need to stay with the Democrats. We need to stay with the Democrats. You know, like the Democrats are the party of labor. You know, and they're the only ones making the argument, right? So they've been the only ones being listened to for all this time, and like even as the younger rank and file become Republican, for mostly cultural reasons, and that's been happening since the '80s. The older is rank and file is usually like, yeah, stick with the Democrats, stick with the Democrats, because that's how they've always done. But the younger guys didn't really have much of an argument for it, at least about like the economic arguments that unions really care about. Their arguments were mostly cultural, and you know that most unions don't exist to legislate gay marriage, right? Or whatever, you know, whatever the cultural issue du jour is. And so the presence of the radical Republicans able to be like, you know, well, this is what Trump could do. This is what this alliance could do. This is how it could work. And providing like a serious economic counterexample to the old guard has allowed a lot of these cultural Republicans to gain the upper hand in the arguments. It's not just enough to have the people with you. You have to have the ideas that can justify them, like justify what the people want to do. And so, like, I'd say, with you know, this is not the radical Republicans win here. If anything, we just tip the scales a little bit, but like, it is still a huge win, and we did certainly play our part. Uh, so JD Vance is the vice president. Sean O'Brien talked at the RNC. The GOP is becoming a party of labor. And I mean, it really is a party of labor, right? Because, like, okay, yes, Nikki Haley spoke, but she basically was given Mike time to kiss Donald Trump's ring, right? there was little else there but be like, and insofar as that goes, that's fine. Like, if the Fox News boomers want to vote for Trump and get like maybe some cultural stuff out of it, and but not in any of their neocon wars or neocon economic policy, like, that's fine. And even though I don't really want to see that direction as being the future of the party, like, there are going to be old people that still like George W. Bush, right, and or whoever, and or Ronald Reagan especially, and man, like, they're always going to be Republican because Ronald Reagan is cool, don't you know? And like, whatever. Like, if we can get those people's votes by just like smiling at them and telling them they're pretty, like, let's do it. I'm not above that. So yeah, like, having Nikki Haley speak was fine. Like, it's kind of like the tribute paid by like subdued nations and like ancient empires. They come before the throne and they grovel and they present their tribute. That was basically the role of Nikki Haley at that convention. Another thing was the prominence of the Zionist lobby. And I'm going to be real with you. I don't like it. But I'm also going to be realer with the people who are going to use that, throw that in our faces and be like, that's why you can't work with the GOP. That those Zionists are there because that is what a big chunk of the laborers inside the GOP believe. Okay? And Zionism is causing genocide and war crimes in Palestine right now, but different people believe things for different reasons. Why are American workers Zionists in this country? Usually because they've got a version of Christianity that says that that's what God wants. And like, they've fallen for one of these deep state psyop preachers that has like gotten them in believing that like it's super important to one's spiritual life to support Israel and so forth. And so like that is the Christian Zionism in the GOP. That is, and I will say this about them: these workers are the best Zionists you will ever meet. They think they're doing good, okay? They think they are helping the world. They think this is the right thing to do. They are good people trying to do the right thing. They are mistaken. But treating them as the same as the Democrats who know that this is wicked and support it anyway, or don't care enough to fight it effectively in the case of the land backaroos and on the campus protests. Yeah. But these are the best Zionists you'll ever meet, okay? Because they are doing it for reasons that indicate their fundamental decency. They're mistaken, but ignorance can be cured. Wickedness cannot, okay? And the Democrats, to a person, have looked at this horror in Gaza, right? This horror that their president is unfolding. And they are figuring that either it's worth it for the money, which is what most of the Democratic electeds are doing, or it's not worth opposing effectively, which is what most of the Gaza protesters are doing with their land back. This is what decolonization looks like crap. Instead of being like, why do you want your taxes to go up to fund a genocide? Like, which would it be a much more effective line to use, right? So, you can't cure evil. At best, evil will only be performatively anti-imperialist, right? The Christian Zionists, they are the people. They are the heart and soul of the laboring masses in this country. They have held on to the ancient faith of our ancestors when so much of society has abandoned it and society has started to fall apart as a result. So we need a lot of what they have to teach us on other subjects, and they need what we have to teach them about Zionism. But we want mostly the same things, um, and like, I will say this: the Republican Party is never going to be like, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. I know that's like a loaded little thing, kind of a little statement, kind of like, have you stopped beating your wife? Where like there's no good answer, literally no good answer to that. I know it's a rhetorical trick the Zionists use, but like it just, because of the memory of the Holocaust and because of concerns about like, minorities being protected and stuff, there's just going to be no appetite amongst these people to drive Israel into the sea, even if such a thing were possible. Because remember, Israel has nukes. Okay, I'm South Africa fell because it let itself fall. Enough of the whites in South Africa decided that apartheid was an evil system, and so the system could not sustain itself without the support of the people that it was for. And like, I don't think the Israelis are going to, like, the Israeli system that controls Gaza and the West Bank might be dismantled, right? But like the Israeli state itself, like, it's a geopolitical fact. It's not going away. What we need now is a system that can ensure peace in the Middle East, and such systems are usually based off of federalism and like shared institutions, rather than ethnic grievances and land back. Israel was born from land back. It's a sign. It's Israel is a byword for why land back should never be allowed to be the guiding ethos of a society. But all the same, those people are there now, and they are a part of the fabric of the region, and their institutions will have to be accommodated somehow. Israel will continue, the Zionist state will continue. Well, actually, no, Israel will continue to exist. I'll just say it like that, because I'm not sure that the state of Israel will retain its Zionist character. In the long term, I don't think that is true. But I do think that Israel in some form will continue to exist. And I think that, like, is I think that is how it's going. That is the eventual line that the Republican Party will adopt on Israel. I mean, there will be other lines. I think we'll get a lot less tolerant of their nonsense, of their war crimes, of their genocides. I think we'll probably fund them a lot less, if at all. Hopefully, not. We'll stop funding them at all. But I do think that at some level, that is probably a point on which the base cannot bend. And, I think it's reasonable enough to concede that. So, so long as justice exists for Palestine, that's the basis for lasting peace. Israel continuing to exist, giving up the settlements, in all, like, that seems perfectly reasonable. But like any kind of settlement that allows for dignity and progress for the Palestinian people is going to be one that we will probably endorse. No, but like, there's going to be not necessarily this. It's not necessarily going to be the two-state solution. I think that's fairly dead, but I think that there might be a possibility for some kind of a federal state. The more I think about it, the more I think that's where my thoughts lie. Muammar Gaddafi's preferred solution of a three-state solution, I think, is dead. The Palestinians themselves appear to have rejected it. So, I think a federal state might be the best way forward for them. But like here is where I think the American Communist Party is going to be useful in making the argument to the MAGA movement as to why we should, they should not be Zionists. Because there's going to be a bit of an inside-outside game here, right? Like, the ACP have positioned themselves outside the Republican Party, so they can be more critical of it. And then we're going to work on the inside to push things in a better direction for the working class. And if between the two of us, we'll be able to maximize our effects, I think. So, and between the two separate organizations, one working on the inside, one working on the outside, hopefully we'll get a lot more done. Because I mean, like, as far just knowing the people involved, I'm sure the ACP has decent lines on Gaza and Palestine and all that. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be progress. And not that wouldn't be the only issue that I think the ACP could like educate the MAGA movement on. There's a couple others, just simple things like calling out like scumbag politicians like Mitch McConnell and people like that. Just like anyone doing that is, helping. But like, other issues don't just jump out at me. But yeah, like they're not. I do not think they are the vanguard, but insofar as their effects might influence America's vanguard, the GOP, I think will be beneficial to the cause, right? Like, it's this is like, oh, Caleb was talking about like a coalition of like all these disparate forces, but like the coalition he's welded together is like Frankenstein's monsters, like all these different people that believe all these different things, and they can't really agree on much, and that limits their ability to work together. I mean, like, just look at like the massive fight over land back that was necessitated by his trying to reach out to the Uhurus. Uh, Whereas, like me and like the ACP have like completely different theories, but we can work together because we're a lot more focused on the goals before us, I think. We're not trying to appeal to such a broad coalition that nothing can be done. It's like the old argument about left unity. Like, I mean, what was it that Lenin said about unity amongst Marxists? I don't know. I can't remember the exact quote. I'm sure it's in a meme somewhere. But anyway, yeah, that applies. All right. Well, this has gone on long enough, and I got a lot to do yet tonight, so I'll call it now. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
What take express?
For life.